All right, let's dive into SEO today. But we're going to add a little Broadway magic to it. We're going to be unpacking a presentation by Grant Simmons all about using entities to define and disambiguate SEO. And he uses Wicked as his framework. It's kind of like Glinda the Good Witch is here to make a complex topic a little less wicked, right? Grant Simmons definitely knows his stuff. He's a former VP of search marketing at Homes.com, and now he's an SEO and content consultant and the U.S. ambassador for Inlinks.
You know, it's really interesting how Grant takes this topic that can feel so technical, entities, knowledge graphs, and makes it more approachable. He really grounds it in something familiar.
Okay, so let's start with the basics then. What exactly is an entity in SEO?
Well, think of an entity as a unique thing that has a specific ID in Google's big catalog. It could be a person like Elphaba from Wicked, or a place like the Emerald City. It could even be a concept like the color green.
So Elphaba, the Green Witch, she's an entity, but why should I care about entities? I'm just trying to get my website noticed.
Well, here's where things get interesting. Google's moving beyond just looking at keywords now. Now they're using these entities to really understand the relationships between things, like how Elphaba and Glinda are both witches, but they have totally different characteristics. This is all part of Google's knowledge graph, which is like this massive web of interconnected entities.
So instead of Google just seeing a bunch of words on the page, they're trying to figure out what my content is really about by looking at these entities and how they're all connected.
Exactly. It's all about context. Let's say you're writing about magic on your website. If you incorporate entities like Elphaba or Glinda, or even Wizard of Oz, you help Google understand what kind of magic you're talking about. It's not just any magic. It's the very specific, unique magic from the Wicked universe.
That makes a lot of sense. So entities are helping Google understand those nuances. And avoid getting confused, right? Like we need to know if we're dealing with the good witch or the misunderstood one.
That's right. And that's where this idea of disambiguation comes in. Google needs to know which you're talking about, which by itself could mean so many things. It could be Elphaba, it could be Glinda. It could even be your neighbor who reads tarot cards. But if you mention green along with witch, then Google's going to know you're talking about Elphaba.
So it's like we're adding those extra clues so Google can see that full picture.
Right. And when your content have all these relevant entities and their connections, it's called entity-complete content. And this kind of content helps search engines really understand the topic in a much deeper way. And it's not even just about pleasing Google. It's about making content that's actually helpful and useful and informative for your audience.
Okay, so let's say I'm writing an article about Glinda's sparkly shoes.
Right.
I shouldn't just focus on that keyword shoes. I should also include, Glinda, magic, Oz, maybe even fashion or good witch, all those details that really paint a more complete picture.
Yeah, you got it. It's like providing all those missing puzzle pieces so your reader and even Google can see that full picture. Grant actually talks about this idea of information gain. Let's say nobody else has written a super detailed article about Glinda's shoes, right? By creating that, you're filling in that content gap. You're providing something new, something valuable that wasn't there before.
I love that. It's like we're discovering some lost chapter in the story of Oz.
And speaking of stories, just like a good story needs a good structure to guide readers, your website needs that too. And that's where internal links come in. They act like the plot of Wicked, connecting all these different pages on your site and showing us how they all relate to each other.
So I have an article about Elphaba. I should link that to articles about Glinda the Wizard. Maybe even Defying Gravity.
Exactly. It's all about guiding us through your website, just like the plot of Wicked guides us through the story. And that makes it easier for us, and even Google, to understand everything you're covering. And your links should use descriptive text. That includes those relevant entities and synonyms. You shouldn't just say, like, click here. Use anchor text like, learn more about Glinda's rivalry with Elphaba.
Wow. So we're weaving this tapestry of information. But how do we make sure Google actually knows all those connections are there? Do we just trust them to figure it out?
Well, there's a way to be more explicit. It's called SAMI as schema. And it's basically a way to directly tell Google, hey, this page about green magic, it's definitely talking about Elphaba and not some other green witch. It's like adding a little sticky note so there's no confusion.
So we're giving Google that cheat sheet so they understand our content perfectly.
You got it. And, tools like Inlinks can help identify and connect these entities. But Grant really emphasizes that human expertise is still crucial.
So we can't just rely on tools to do all the thinking for us.
Right. We still need to use our judgment and be creative in selecting the right entities and weave them into our content to build a website that's as engaging as the World of Oz itself.
I'm already feeling like SEO is a lot less wicked now. It feels a lot more manageable. We've gone way past simple keywords to all these entities, from these simple words to this whole web of ideas.
And we're just getting started. So we've seen how these entities can help search engines understand your content like a well-written story. Now, let's explore how to actually build a website that's as engaging and interconnected as, like, the World of Oz.
That sounds way more fun than my current website. It's just a bunch of standalone pages. How do I make it more like this wicked world we're talking about?
Well, it all comes down to building clusters. Clusters of related content, right? And Grant really emphasizes that internal linking is super key for this.
So instead of just having a page about Elphaba and a separate page about Glinda, I should be grouping them together somehow to show that they're connected.
Exactly. Think of it like those chapters in the book Wicked. You wouldn't just jump randomly between scenes, would you? The story guides you through all these different characters and plot points and shows you how they all connect. Your website should do the same thing.
So I could have, like, an Elphaba cluster
Yeah.
with pages about her backstory, her powers, her relationship with Glinda and all that, and then a separate cluster for Glinda. Maybe one for the wizard. Even one for, like, the history of Oz itself.
You're getting it. By creating these clusters, you're giving visitors this deeper understanding of each topic. It's like having this like really well-organized library where everything's connected. Google loves this kind of structure too, because it makes it way easier for them to understand your site.
Wow, this is really making me think differently. I've never thought of my website as a story before, but it makes total sense. So I'm guiding readers through my content, just like Wicked guides the audience.
Exactly. And as you build these clusters, remember that each page needs to have a unique focus. You know, just like you wouldn't have two chapters in Wicked that are basically the same, right?
Yeah.
You want to avoid having pages that are just repeating the same information.
Each page needs its own, like, spotlight, like when the Elphaba's belting out defying gravity on stage.
Yeah, perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And don't forget about Simeoni's schema. It's like adding these little labels to each page that say, you know, this page is about this specific entity. That way, even if two pages use similar keywords, Google can still tell them apart.
So it's all about clarity and connection for both my readers and for Google.
Exactly. And speaking of clarity, Grant shared this funny anecdote about how even SEO experts can get tripped up by entities sometimes. He was searching for information about those flying monkeys from The Wizard of Oz, but the results kept showing him stuff like jeans and hemp products.
Wait, what? How did flying monkeys turn into jeans?
Well, it turns out he wasn't using the right entity. It wasn't flying monkeys, it was winged monkeys.
Oh, wow. So even the experts have to, like, double check their work and make sure they're using the right entities.
Absolutely. Tools can help, but ultimately it's about understanding how search engines work and using our own judgment to interpret the data. Just like in Wicked, things aren't always what they seem. You got to look beneath the surface to find the real story.
So what does all this mean for our listeners, for those who are trying to improve their SEO?
Well, it means that entity SEO is about going beyond simple keywords. It's about thinking about that bigger picture. It's about building a website that's as, you know, well-structured and engaging as a good story.
It's about building those connections,
Yeah.
creating those clusters, guiding visitors through that whole journey of information, and making sure Google's with us every step of the way.
You got it. By understanding entities, you can build a website that's informative and wickedly effective.
I'm already feeling inspired. Like, I want to go revamp my whole website right now.
Well,
But before we get too carried away, there's one more thing that Grant mentioned
yeah.
that I want to touch on. That's the importance of human expertise.
Yeah, that's so crucial. While all these tools and technology can be so helpful, they really can't replace that human element.
So it's not just about plugging in data
Yeah.
and letting the algorithms do their thing.
Right. We still need people who understand the nuances of language, the context, what users actually want. We have to use our own knowledge and experience to make smart decisions about which entities to use and how to actually connect them.
It's like finding that balance between automation and human ingenuity. We need to use the tools effectively, but also trust our gut and be creative.
Exactly. Just like Elphaba defied gravity, we need to defy the traditional limitations of SEO by embracing these entities.
I love that. So to sum everything up, what's the most important thing our listeners should remember from this deep dive into entity SEO?
I think the biggest takeaway here is that entity SEO isn't some like mysterious dark art. It's about understanding how search engines are changing to better understand what content actually means
Yeah.
and the context around it.
And it's about using that knowledge
Mm.
to create websites and content
Mm.
that are really helpful, informative, and engaging.
Exactly. By embracing entities, we can make our content more visible, more relevant, and more valuable to the people we want to reach.
It's about going beyond simple keywords and seeing that bigger picture.
Yeah, it's about building those connections, those clusters, that whole journey through our content.
And just like a good story,
Mm-hmm.
it needs to be well-structured
Mm.
and engaging and keep people wanting more. But, isn't there a risk of getting lost in all these entities? Like, how do we even know which ones are the most important?
That's where human expertise comes in again. We have to really think about our content and figure out those core entities that are like crucial to what we're talking about. Grant mentioned that tools can help us automate some of this, but we still need a human to make sure we're picking the right entities and connecting them in a way that actually makes sense.
So it's not about just cramming as many entities as possible into our content. It's about choosing the right ones and using them strategically.
Exactly. It's about quality over quantity. And it's about using entities to actually enhance our content, not to try and like manipulate search engines.
Right. We want to be helpful, not wicked.
Right, exactly. It's about creating this whole world of interconnected content that's both informative and engaging, just like the creators of Wicked did, with all those characters and themes.
That's a great point. We're taking a page from the Wicked playbook and using entities to define, disambiguate, and really enhance our SEO. So it really is like putting on a Broadway production. You need all those right pieces working together to create something truly spectacular.
That's a great way to put it. Just like a good show needs a talented cast and crew, your website needs carefully chosen entities and a well-structured content strategy.
Okay, so for our listeners who are, ready to take a starring role in this whole entity SEO thing, what's that first step they should take?
Well, Grant suggested starting by thinking about your website or a piece of content. And imagine you're Google trying to figure it out. What are the main entities involved? How can you use all these principles we've been talking about, like disambiguation, internal linking, semi-as schema, to make sure that meaning is crystal clear?
It's like we're asking, okay, if this was a scene in Wicked, who are the main characters? What are their motivations? How do all the relationships, drive that plot forward?
Exactly. Once you start looking at your content through this entity lens, all those SEO strategies will start to feel a lot more intuitive and less wickedly complex.
This deep dive has been so helpful. We've learned so much from Grant Simmons today and his wicked approach to entity SEO.
It's amazing how a familiar story can make even the most technical concepts so approachable.
I know, right?
Yeah.
So if our listeners want to learn more about entity SEO and tools like inlinks, where should they go?
There's so much out there, online. We'll definitely include some helpful links in the show notes.
Perfect. And with that, we'll leave you to think about all the possibilities of entity SEO. Remember, it's not about magic spells and tricks. It's about understanding how to create a website that's as informative and engaging as Oz.
Until next time, keep experimenting and learning, and keep defying the limits of what's possible with SEO.
And we'll see you on our next deep dive.